And there are still big questions about what the impact the January 6th committee's findings will have on Republican voters. But so far, at least 120 election deniers have already won the GOP nomination in races across the country, according to analysis by 538. Joining us now is Chris Krebs, former director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, also known as CISA. So you see all these candidates around the country who deny the election. What sort of power will they have if they're elected to office?
Well, it depends on the state. So a state like Arizona, where there is a independently statewide elected Secretary of State, they tend to have control over the administration of the elections throughout the state. There is a certification responsibility of the governor. So if Kari Lake were to be elected governor, she would have a role there. It is also states like Pennsylvania where the governor appoints the Secretary of State who is responsible for administering. So a governor in a state like Pennsylvania would have more control. That same sort of situation exists in Florida as well. Now, in the Arizona case, you do have a Secretary of State who is an election denier, at least a candidate for the GOP, and Mark Finchem. And in the case of Pennsylvania, you've got Doug Mastriano, who is one of the original election deniers. And so he has already said he would appoint someone to the Secretary of State role that would more align with his beliefs. So there is a distributed threat to the administration of democracy that is on the ballot this year, 2022, with the longer-term implications of 2024.
And in fact, in Mastriano's case, Chris, he's within the margin of error now. He is closing the gap with Josh Shapiro, the Democrat, who's the elected Attorney General. And the fact that he who marched in the January 6th riot, he claims he did not breach the Capitol itself, but he was there and marching, and we know that, and would be the governor of a state, replacing an incumbent Democrat. So there are enough states right now with election deniers in position to win governors or Secretary of State positions to change the electoral count in 2024, which is extraordinary. I mean, people replacing the people who did resist
I'd add on top
in
of
battlegrounds.
That. Yeah. Well, one thing that I'm greatly concerned about is that there are Democratic efforts across the country, from the Democratic Party, that is, to support some of these further to the right candidates in Pennsylvania, like Mastriano, in the view that they have a more favorable matchup in the general midterm election in the fall. And I just think it's incredibly cynical. It's risking karma as well. And I think that leadership in the Democratic Party needs to take a long, hard look at what they may be setting up for in the fall.
Well, this just happened in Maryland, in fact, last Tuesday. And it happened with Mastriano in the primary, where Democratic groups did help Mastriano win in that primary. So what does this signal to you about the future direction of the Republican Party? Chris?
I think you lost audio.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry, Chris. I'm just saying, what does it signal to you about the future direction of the Republican Party when election deniers are potentially going to be in such critical positions after 2022?
Well, it is, it's pretty disturbing, in fact, that you have this emerging, focus of the GOP that continues to support election denial movement. You see in Wisconsin now, we have this further effort to do the impossible, and that is decertify the 2020 election. Those movements have happened in Arizona, and Kari Lake has said that she would decertify the 2020, just like Mastriano said he would decertify the 2020 election in Pennsylvania. I think what we're looking at, really more than anything, is an opportunity for existing GOP leadership to stand up and say, this is not what this party stands for. This is not what the GOP, the Republican Party, should be focused on. Let's talk about the other things that Americans care about, rather than what the former president continues to obsessively focus on. And so I think we're seeing a fracture. We're going to see a fork in the road, and people are going to have to make a decision. And in part, my hope, that's what the January 6th committee is helping to continue to expose, that the old way of thinking, that the big lie, the elections was stolen movement, is just not a viable path for Republicans across the country.
It's also dangerous in terms of national security. I'm sure you noticed Pottinger during the committee hearings mentioning that the insurrection itself was a national security threat on a global scale. What were you hearing? What sort of chatter were you hearing around the time of the insurrection?
So that was certainly probably the second most notable moment from last evening. I remember back in the time of January 2021, one of my immediate thoughts was how the broader big lie and January 6th undermines the standing of American democracy on a global scale. And in fact, what we have seen is both the Chinese government and the Russian government promote scenes of the riot at the Capitol, the insurrection, for their own purposes. So the Russians have done it globally to undercut confidence in the stability of American leadership. The Chinese, on the other hand, have shared that information domestically, saying, hey, you want a democracy? This is what democracy looks like. Pretty chaotic, huh? So our adversaries see this, they use it to their own benefit, and I do believe that when we look at 2022 and the midterms, that they will continue to undermine confidence in the power of American democracy here at home and worldwide.